Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into a topic you guys requested, Our Lady of Good Success. It's history and prophecy and Marian devotion, all rolled into one. We're going back in time. 16th and 17th century Quito, Ecuador, to the convent of the Immaculate Conception. And at the heart of this story is a fascinating woman, Mother Mariana de Jesús Torres.
She had such a fascinating life. Imagine, 13 years old, travels from Spain to Ecuador to establish a convent with a group of nuns.
Wow. What really struck me was her early piety. I mean, a mystical engagement with Jesus at 9 years old.
Yeah.
And then on the journey to Ecuador, she has this vision of a serpent battling the Virgin Mary.
Oh, wow.
Like it's foreshadowing the spiritual struggles to come.
It really sets the stage, doesn't it, for what unfolds later. It speaks to the connection between her life and the Virgin Mary. And we can't forget, Mother Mariana's life was full of suffering. The sources detail how she died and was resurrected 3 times.
3 times.
Offering herself as a victim soul for the sins of the 20th century.
That concept of a victim soul is always something that makes me think. Could you explain that a little bit more for our listener?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
In Catholic tradition, a victim soul is someone who willingly embraces suffering, unites it with Christ's sacrifice on the cross for the good of others and for the redemption of the world. And Mother Mariana's willingness to face death repeatedly, it's really a testament to her devotion.
Wow. So let's move on to the apparitions themselves, visions of Our Lady of Good Success. Starting back in 1594, what makes these apparitions so unique?
Well, in the first apparition, Mary identifies herself as Mary of Good Success, and she reveals she will govern the convent. But she also gives this warning, a prophecy of turmoil, not just in the convent, but for the church in the centuries to come, especially in the 20th century.
Prophecies. I knew this deep dive would deliver. And it gets more interesting. Our Lady requested a statue be made in her likeness.
Okay.
And she miraculously provided her exact measurements to ensure accuracy. Talk about divine intervention.
It's like a blueprint for a sacred image. This request for a statue, it's common in Marian apparitions. It creates this tangible, lasting reminder of the event. And it serves as a focus for prayer and devotion.
Yeah. And the creation of the statue itself is a little miraculous. Our Lady chose the artist, Francisco del Castillo. And then in 1611, the statue was miraculously finished overnight by angels. The sources say the nuns heard heavenly singing.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine that artist waking up and seeing the statue completed?
The awe, to find his work completed by angels.
Yeah.
It's the details that make these stories so powerful. It emphasizes that it wasn't just art. This was something divine.
Okay. So before we go into those prophecies, I think it's important to point out that there are varying degrees of church approval surrounding Our Lady of Good Success. Some sources say it's traditionally approved, others list it as partial approval. What's the distinction?
That's a great point. So a prayer to Our Lady of Good Success has an imprimatur, meaning it's free from doctrinal error. And the cause for Mother Mariana's beatification has been opened.
Okay.
But the apparitions themselves haven't been formally approved by the Vatican. This is pretty common with Marian apparitions.
Yeah.
The Church is cautious, examines everything before making a declaration.
So there's this nuanced layer, there's spiritual fruit, but we still need to be discerning. So let's get into those prophecies. What did Our Lady foretell about the future of the church and the world?
Well, the sources talk about a decline in faith and morals, particularly in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Okay.
And there are warnings of attacks on the sacraments,
Oh, wow.
corrupt clergy, challenges to religious communities, spread of heresy. It's pretty sobering.
Sounds a little like some of the prophecies from Fatima. Is there a connection there?
It's a recurring theme. The interpretations vary, but it's a call to action or a renewal of faith and a deeper commitment
Yeah.
in the face of these challenges.
So it's not all doom and gloom, but it's also a message of hope.
Right. Our Lady emphasizes specific spiritual practices,
Like what?
especially prayer and sacrifice for the sanctification of priests. It really emphasizes their essential role in guiding the faithful.
That feels relevant today. So those are the general warnings. But are there any specific prophecies that Our Lady of Good Success revealed?
There are a few. One predicts a truly Catholic president of Ecuador who'd be martyred.
Oh, wow.
Many people think this refers to Gabriel Garcia Moreno,
Okay.
assassinated in 1875,
Oh, yeah.
right in front of the presidential palace.
Wow.
And the palace is right across from the convent of the Immaculate Conception. It's interesting.
Wow.
Another intriguing one is papal infallibility. Our Lady predicted the dogma of papal infallibility.
So the Pope can't be wrong.
Well, the idea is the Pope, under specific circumstances, is protected from error when formally teaching on matters of faith and morals. This dogma, she predicted, would be proclaimed by the same Pope who defined the dogma of the Immaculate Conception.
Was it?
It was.
Wow.
Both were proclaimed by Blessed Pope Pius IX in the 19th century.
Wow. So whether you see these as divinely inspired or coincidental, they add to the intrigue surrounding Our Lady of Good Success.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So this story resonates with so many people, especially devout Catholics. It's this blend of history, faith, and the possibility of divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go from here? We've got prophecies of crisis, signs of hope, and this complex web of church approval. What do we unpack next?
Maybe we should dive into those prophecies a little deeper.
Yeah.
Explore how they might be relevant to Catholics today. What resonates the most with you?
I think the prophecies about the corruption of the clergy and challenges to traditional values are the most interesting. These issues are constantly being debated today. It's kind of unsettling to think they may have been foreseen centuries ago. It makes you wonder, did Mother Mariana and Our Lady of Good Success have a glimpse into our world and our modern struggles?
That's a great point. Maybe these warnings, regardless of their official approval, are reminders about upholding faith and values in the face of modern pressures.
That's something to think about for sure. Let's dive deeper into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
It's really remarkable, those prophecies. From centuries ago, it's like they mirror the anxieties that many Catholics feel today, like Mother Mariana and Our Lady of Good Success saw into our world.
It is thought-provoking.
With all its complexities.
Yeah. You mentioned modern pressures. Do you think that's what Our Lady of Good Success was warning about back then?
It's possible. The prophecies were given in a specific context, but the core messages, they often have this timeless relevance, like the corruption of the clergy. That was a problem in Mother Mariana's time, but it's still a problem today.
Yeah.
The call for holiness and integrity among those who serve the church, that message is still relevant.
It's a need that transcends time for sure. And what about the prophecies about attacks on marriage and family? How do those resonate with us today?
I think those prophecies show how important family is as a foundation of faith and society. It's about the sanctity of these institutions, especially today, where those values are questioned all the time.
So we shouldn't try to connect specific predictions to current events.
Right. It's more about getting the spiritual truths and applying those to our lives. The prophecies are a call to action, a call to deepen our faith, engage in prayer, and live out the gospel message.
You said call to action. What specific actions did Our Lady of Good Success advocate for?
She emphasized prayer, penance, and sacrifice, especially for priests. It's a reminder that we aren't just watching this happen. We need to support our priests, pray for them, and recognize how important they are.
Especially today, when so many priests are struggling. How did these prophecies from Quito connect to other Marian apparitions? We talked about Fatima. But are there others with similar messages?
You're right to see the connection, prophecies of crisis. It's a recurring theme, like in La Salette, France. Mary warned of famine and societal problems, or Akita, Japan, where she spoke of trials within the church.
So it's this pattern of warning about a decline in faith and morals, and a call to return to God. It must be a lot to process for devout Catholics. How should they think about these prophecies?
I think they should think about it with a discerning heart in mind. It's easy to get caught up in the more sensational parts.
Right.
But we shouldn't get swept up in speculation and fear.
We shouldn't treat them like fortune-telling.
Right. It's more about the core message.
Right.
What is Our Lady calling us to do? How can we respond? With a renewed commitment to faith.
Okay, so it's not about dates and events.
Right.
It's about internalizing the truths.
Exactly.
And letting those guide our actions. But it's not always easy to separate those truths from the context.
It's a challenge. There's a lot of different views. Some people dismiss it as superstition, others take it as literal. But a lot of people are somewhere in between. They see it as symbolic warnings, a call to action.
So where does that leave us as Catholics trying to understand?
I think we have to approach these prophecies with faith and reason. We can believe in divine intervention, but also look at the evidence and seek guidance from the church.
It's a balancing act.
It is. It's about faith and reason,
Right.
openness to the miraculous, and a healthy dose of discernment.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's about asking ourselves, how can we live more in line with the gospel? How can we respond as individuals, as a church, with prayer and devotion?
It's about looking inward, reflecting, And trying to be better.
Exactly. It's about how we can reflect his love.
Speaking of deeper devotion, let's go back to the statue. We talked about those measurements Mary gave. Why all that detail?
I think it shows how important it is to represent these figures properly. It wasn't just a piece of art.
Yeah.
It was meant for prayer, a representation of her presence.
I had to be authentic to how Mary appeared to Mother Mariana.
Exactly. There are even stories about Mary helping to make the statue, guiding the artist, telling him what to use.
That's incredible. It's like we're there watching it happen. What about the pose in the face? Is there a meaning there?
Definitely. There's a lot of symbolism. She's holding baby Jesus in her left arm and a scepter in her right. It shows her queenship and her protection over the convent in her face. She looks loving but sorrowful, like she knows what's coming.
It adds another layer of meaning.
Yeah. Even in the midst of challenges, even when things are dark, Mary's always there.
That's a comforting thought. Is the statue still at the convent? Can people see it?
Yes, it's still there. And many pilgrims visit every year. The convent was named an Archdiocesan Marian sanctuary in 1991.
So even without full Vatican approval, the Church recognizes it.
It does. It shows how powerful this devotion is.
It shows that faith isn't always so black and white.
Right.
It's a reminder that faith is a journey.
It is. And sometimes the biggest truths are found in the mysteries.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. This has been so insightful.
What has stood out to you the most about Our Lady of Good Success?
I think it's the hope and the warning. It's inspiring, but also scary. It's like she's saying, face the challenges, but do it with prayer and faith.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It leads us perfectly to the final part, where we talk about how these messages can guide us.
Okay. Let's get into that in part 3. So as we wrap up Our Lady of Good Success, I keep thinking about those prophecies.
Yeah.
And how relevant are they today? I mean, it's one thing to talk about centuries ago, but how do we apply these messages to our lives in the modern world?
It's a tough question. With prophecy, we can't think of it as step-by-step predictions.
Yeah.
It's more about those spiritual truths and how we can use them.
So less predicting specific events.
Right.
More like understanding the message.
Exactly.
How it applies.
The decline in faith and morals, the corruption of the clergy, those were real in her time.
Sure.
But they're also spiritual battles that are always there.
It's like human nature.
Yeah.
She's showing us the potential for problems.
She's not just predicting, she's calling us to be better.
And to act.
Exactly.
It's not enough to just know about it.
Right.
We have to do something.
Prayer, penance, sacrifice, those aren't passive. You have to be intentional.
We're not just watching.
Right.
We're participating.
You have a responsibility.
Yeah. And that's where the hope comes in. It's not all bad.
God and Mary are with us.
And we can make a difference.
Exactly.
I love that balance.
Yeah.
Warning and hope.
It's about being vigilant.
But not giving up.
Right. We have the sacraments, prayer, and each other.
That's so important. We have each other.
Don't isolate yourself.
Right.
Support each other.
Turn anxiety into action.
Yes.
Be a Catholic in the world.
Don't shrink back.
Yeah.
We all contribute in our own way.
That's a good perspective.
It's empowering.
It is. Our choices matter.
They do. I think that's a big takeaway from Our Lady of Good Success.
It's more than just a story.
It's a message.
Yeah.
We're all called to be saints.
And speaking of saints...
What about Mother Mariana? What can we learn from her?
That's a good question. She had such incredible faith.
She did.
I mean, 13 years old.
Leaving everything behind.
And all the suffering.
It really makes you think. What would we sacrifice for our faith?
It's hard to imagine.
It is.
Having faith like that.
But it's inspiring.
Yeah.
We can all strive for holiness.
So even if we're not nuns,
right,
we can still sacrifice.
Find those opportunities, big or small.
To put faith into action.
Exactly.
To serve holiness is for everyone.
That's the message of Our Lady of Good Success.
It's about faith and prophecy.
Can Mary.
But it's also a challenge.
To be better.
I'm so glad we did this deep dive.
Me too.
It's been amazing.
What did you think?
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
And scary.
It makes you think.
It does.
I hope our listener enjoyed it.
I think they did. Maybe they'll even want to learn more.
Maybe make a pilgrimage to Quito.
What a great idea.
See the convent.
For those who can't, this is like a virtual pilgrimage.
Yes.
To encounter Mary.
And find hope.
Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into our faith.